tell me about, who you are, what Expo is, what the journey's been so far.
Yeah. Who am I? So I always say I have a boring and a fun side to myself. So the boring, to get out of the way, was steeped at Barclays. I used to lead digital for them, for UK and I. Essentially what that meant, I had a team of 10 underneath me, increasing digital adoption. Essentially we were trying to fight off Monzo. That was the key.
Trying to fight off Monzo?
Yeah, like all the new challenger banks. And of course, they didn't do too well at that, just because, there's just so much bureaucracy. Just to change the color of a button has to go through legal and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's a whole headache. I guess the more fun side to myself, I was actually a sprinter for England, and that's actually how I fell into the creator economy. It was all kind of like by mistake. So when I was at university, I don't know, 5 years ago, I was posting on Instagram, my coach shouted at me.
He shouted at you?
Yeah, because he was just like, yeah, you need to run fast, like training, all that kind of stuff. And then people really liked it because they never got an insight into an athlete's life. Mm-hmm. They never really, so I was kind of doing like the Tesco version, or the Tesco Essentials version of the F1 Drive to Survive. Have you seen that?
No. Is that the new Netflix?
Yeah, it's a new Netflix F1 racing thing now. Everyone now loves F1 basically. So kind of giving an insight into a student athlete's life, and it garnered a bit of a following. And then brands start reaching out to me like, hey, but first back in the day, it was just like, hey, we'll give you free spikes, free gear if you. And I'm a broke first year student. I'm like, fuck yeah, of course I'm gonna accept that. Then 2-3 months later, it was like, hey, how much you charge? What's your rate? And I'm thinking, oh, rate? What does this mean? I didn't know any other creators as well, so I was just like, okay, £50 maybe. And they're just like, okay, cool, great, blah blah. Of course, definitely lowballed. But they accepted, and I was earning something. As like £50 as a first year student, that's nearly a week's worth of food basically. Mm-hmm. You can get through there. But then what I didn't get was the payment terms. I didn't understand that, because it was kind of like, you want me to post this today, but then you're gonna pay me in 3 months, and then after that then I still don't get paid in 3 months. I still then have to reach out to you, and then the person I reach out to is like, oh, I don't handle finances. I'm going to get back to you and see what the accounts team says. And then, wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they pay you and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where Expo was born then. I met my co-founder at university as well. He's a year above me. He ran a successful event startup, which he exited. Mm-hmm. And he used to be the person that took 90 days to pay. And I was the person that waited 90 days. So it's kind of like both sides of the same coin. And that's how we began. And
so you met Tommy at uni, year above. You had seen firsthand how difficult it was to get paid as a creator, and he had experienced it from the flip side. Mm-hmm. What happened after that? Was there a specific moment where you were like, hey, let's start a business? Or were you ranting one day about how difficult it was?
Literally, it was ranting one day. It literally came to my accommodation, and I was just ranting. And I'm an attribute I have, I'm quite irritable, easily irritable. But then in my head straight, I'm just thinking, how can this be fixed, basically? Mm-hmm. So we kind of thought to each other, let's just stop bitching about this thing, and let's build something and see what we can do. So we didn't think, hey, we're going to be this big startup that's now getting revenue. We're just kind of like, we have an issue now. Let's see if other people have the issue and are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So we literally just started off as a marketplace, literally connecting the brands and the creators together. At first, spoke to the creators more, and then we've kept finding this weird behavior. So I'm a big data guy, where creators would get the external campaigns and bring it into a marketplace. But a marketplace's job is to give you jobs. So we didn't understand why they were doing that. I mean, it sounds nice, like, oh, they love us so much, they're bringing so much campaigns into us. But what I kind of do is I look for a database, find the phone numbers, and just call them straight away. Like, hey, I'm the founder. You're doing this weird thing. Can you explain why? Basically.
What did they say?
And they were just like, oh, because you pay us quicker. Because when we use you for the last mile payment, because at the time we use Stripe Connect or something like that, so we had like an escrow, so some of the brands would charge. But then they were like, oh, we'd love to use you for bigger brands, but bigger brands don't use apps. Like, they have like their own invoice system. So I was like, oh, interesting. So we started with that, and that's how we actually pivoted towards invoice factoring based on what our creators were saying through that. Mm-hmm.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And so you started, and my assumption here is that you started something, it was a marketplace, you had no real clue what you were doing, you're figuring it out.
For sure.
You went and then you saw this pattern, you just called up the guys and gals, and like, what's going on, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Found that insight and then thought, okay, this could be something bigger, and started working towards that.
For sure. Like, it's one of the best ways to make a pivot. And it's like sometimes I'll go on the phone with them even now, and I just be like, hey, if they don't want to use something, or I'd literally just ask them, what would we have to do for you to use this right now? Type of thing. And again, doesn't mean that we're going to do exactly what they say, but it gives you a lot of insight into what's a problem with it. And sometimes it's something so small. So to give an example, we do invoice factoring. An invoice can be up to £1 million, right? And we can invoice factor that for them for free. And what we found is that some creators won't put in their bigger invoices. So there's a button that just says start your invoices, it's free. And then there's a small description that just says, hey, we do it for free, and stuff like that. But we never mentioned what our maximum figure was for an invoice. So most creators who are earning or just started earning, they're thinking, oh, I've got a big £2,000 invoice, I'm not sure they can do this. And they're not going to reach out to you to be like, they're not going to email you and be like, hey, can you do this invoice? They're just going to be like, you know what, I don't want to fuck this up. Let me just do it the normal way. See that? So then just changing the text and add it, hey, we could do up to 1 million in there. All of a sudden, a flood of big invoices came through. So just sometimes just the really little things.
Yeah.